Final Fantasy IX has been rumored to be in development as a remake for a while now, and there's a few reasons why we actually haven't seen anything yet. According to a new report, Final Fantasy IX Remake wasn't just real, it was actually really far along in development, and it was going to be one complete game. And then something happened behind the scenes that caused development to just kind of fall apart. And considering we've been hearing about this remake for so long now, this might explain why Square Enix has actually never shown anything off. So what happened to the Final Fantasy IX Remake? Will we ever play it? I don't know, but we're going to talk about some of the new stuff that's just come out today. So before we get into that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts down below. Would you be excited for a Final Fantasy IX remake, or do you not really care as much? So let's get to it. So obviously, before we get too carried away, there's one important thing to establish here. Square Enix has never officially announced a Final Fantasy IX remake. There's never been a trailer or screenshots or even official acknowledgement that something like this exists. So everything we're talking about today is still obviously a rumor. But Final Fantasy IX Remake has been particularly interesting because we've been hearing about it since it appeared in this enormous NVIDIA database leak alongside some other Square Enix projects that eventually became real games. Over the years, multiple insiders have backed up its existence, so this hasn't been one random rumor that refuses to go away. And now we've finally got what might be the most interesting piece of information as to why it's never going to happen, maybe. So apparently got pretty far. Alex Donaldson, the co-founder of RPG site and now Respec, recently talked about Final Fantasy IX Remake and said that the project absolutely existed and was very far along. That's the part of the story that immediately got my attention because I've wondered, where exactly was this? Was Final Fantasy IX Remake just an idea? Did they do a prototype? Was it working and then they just moved on from it? Or was there a substantial game being made behind the scenes? And according to Donaldson, it was apparently just that. The project progressed pretty significantly before development eventually just kind of stopped. And unfortunately, we don't know exactly why. Maybe there were some development problems. Maybe Square Enix wasn't happy with the direction. Maybe budget became an issue, or perhaps they just wanted to prioritize other projects. We don't know, and I don't want to pretend that we do, but if this report is accurate, Final Fantasy IX Remake apparently got pretty darn close before being publicly teased. And another detail here that I actually love is that Final Fantasy IX Remake was apparently going to be one complete game, not just like a multi-year development thing over multiple games like Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy was, but just one game. Donaldson says that the project was smaller in scope compared to the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, and personally, I think that's exactly how Final Fantasy IX should be handled. I love what Square Enix has done with the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth and eventually Revelation next year, but I don't think every classic Final Fantasy needs to become this gigantic multi-game project that takes a decade to complete. Final Fantasy IX doesn't need that. Give me the original game with some beautiful modern visuals, speed up some combat, quality of life stuff. I really just think that there are some parts of the world that could be expanded without changing what Final Fantasy IX is. That's basically all I want. And to find out that this might have more or less been what Final Fantasy IX Remake was going to be, and now hearing that it's not going to happen, it's kind of disappointing. The really interesting thing is that this new report also lines up with what we've been hearing for a while now. Back around Final Fantasy IX's 25th anniversary last year, there were some other rumors saying that the project could be in trouble, and the phrase "on ice" was being used, maybe indefinitely shelved, with the question of whether or not Square Enix would ever return to it. So the latest information here that I'm telling you guys about today isn't suddenly telling us that the Final Fantasy IX Remake disappeared. It probably reiterates that, yes, last year they may have indefinitely shelved it and somebody else checked in and they've still decided to not move forward with it. But the interesting thing to remember is that last year was the 25th anniversary and there was some stuff that came out to kind of support that, and all signs really just showed this is the year. 2025 is going to be the year for Final Fantasy IX Remake, and obviously now we're in August of 2026 and nothing happened. I mean, we had new artwork, new merchandise, an anniversary website, and a whole bunch of other Final Fantasy IX celebrations, and naturally everybody thought the same thing. This is it. Surely all of this was leading towards a remake finally being announced, and yeah, of course, nothing. The anniversary came and went without Square Enix saying anything about a remake. But if the project had already run into problems behind the scenes, suddenly it makes more sense. Square Enix could still celebrate Final Fantasy IX, they could still use some artwork and merchandise that had been prepared, but they couldn't actually show a game because it wasn't moving forward anymore. According to Donaldson, at least some of the artwork associated with the anniversary may have actually originated from work connected to the remake. If that's true, we might have unknowingly seen pieces of Final Fantasy IX Remake without actually ever seeing the game itself. So is it canceled? I would say, obviously I don't know for sure, but I think some of the phrasing that's been used in these rumors as stalled or on ice, it's probably a politically correct way to say, yeah, probably. But it's also different from Square Enix completely canceling the project altogether and throwing everything away. I mean, especially if it was very far along in development. Square Enix had invested years of development into this game, and there could potentially be a lot of work sitting there waiting to be picked back up. Maybe Square Enix eventually gives it a go with another team. Maybe they change the scope. Maybe they go back and figure out whatever problems caused development to stop, or maybe they just don't come back at all, and that's unfortunately where we're at now. Personally, I really hope that Square Enix finds a way to make this work. Final Fantasy IX is arguably one of the best candidates in the entire series for this kind of remake, and it already has such a distinct visual identity. I mean, the characters are exaggerated, the environments almost look like beautiful illustrations, even for the time when it came out on the PlayStation 1. It was great. It had this beautiful storybook aesthetic. And we've even seen through the fan-made Memoria project how incredible Final Fantasy IX can look with, you know, the original art direction being translated into some modern visuals. It doesn't need to be Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It just needs to feel like a modern version of that original game. And from the sound of it, that might actually have been what Square Enix was trying to make. But in all honesty, I'm not so super disappointed like I know some of you guys out there might be. I mean, I've had the opportunity to play the Mogiri mod, which I've talked about on my channel before. If you're unfamiliar, it's basically a fan project that upscales everything and makes it have a lot of quality of life stuff. So I would say that's unofficially the way to play Final Fantasy IX Remake. So I'm not so disappointed that it's not going to happen because I'm quite content with that version of the game, although it's unofficial. We also need to bear in mind that remakes might not necessarily be the way that Square Enix wants to move forward. Yes, they're a great way to, you know, kind of reintroduce these legacy IPs to new people and a new audience, but does Square Enix really want to be the remake company? And I think they've done enough of that over the last few years. And if this is the reason that they've more or less canned this remake, then I completely understand and support that. I do support new ideas, new experiences, fresh things. We don't always have to rehash the past in order to, you know, make money, more or less. And if this is Square Enix's thinking, then again, I support that. But there's an irony to that too, because Final Fantasy Resonance is coming out and it's a return to form with some of the visions as well that are basically throwback characters. So who knows? It's just conjecture right now. So right now, Final Fantasy IX Remake is in a strange position for sure. Officially, it doesn't exist. Square Enix has never announced it. Unofficially though, we've had years of reports saying that it didn't exist, and the newest information suggests that development actually progressed pretty far. And it was apparently going to be a smaller single game remake, and then something happened. Development stalled, and for now, this remake appears to be sitting on the shelf. I just hope it doesn't stay there forever, because knowing that a Final Fantasy IX remake might exist somewhere inside Square Enix is almost worse than never knowing about it at all. So let me know your thoughts. Were you excited for this? Are you disappointed? Again, nothing's official, so we can't be really truly disappointed. And there are some other great ways to play Final Fantasy IX with so many other extra quality of life things. So I'm not having my day ruined over it, but it's just an interesting piece of news that I wanted to share, and I want to know your thoughts on it as well. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys on another video very soon. Bye-bye.